everyone. Welcome to the Find Your Next Guitar podcast. I am Dave, your host, and today we have an awesome interview lined up with Doug Roberts, the creator of Retro Valves. And Doug's already on the line with us. So how's it going, Doug?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. So,
talk with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. For those that aren't familiar with who you are and your background, or if someone's never heard of Retro Valves or Jet City, could you give a little background on what you do and how you got involved with them?
Yeah. So, I grew up in a guitar-playing family. I'm from L.A. My dad was a well-known studio musician, part of the Wrecking Crew bunch, and I was surrounded by gear all the time growing up as a kid. Amps and tape recorders and wah-wah pedals and all that kind of stuff. And that's what originally got me interested in that kind of stuff. So as I grew older, I took to electronics, and it's actually my career. So I started out as a technician for a medical company back in the early 80s, and now a senior engineer for a prominent medical company now, designing defibrillators. So that's my background.
Okay.
So I've always been, I played in metal bands and been a rock and roller from the get-go, and so the two mixed together to get me really interested in designing amps and things around that nature. Some people know that I worked with Mike Soldano, and I had worked together and built a couple of prototypes back in the early 80s, and Mike went on to make his company from that starting place. So Mike and I still know each other, with great buds, and he's really done well with that. Since then, I've always wanted to see if it was possible to emulate a vacuum tube.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started working on it. I've probably been working on it now for 8 years. When I first started, it was daunting, much harder than I thought it was going to be, even with all my technical experience. So it took quite a while to get a design that actually worked, and then would work over, multiple platforms. So that's kind of the history of that. And I went and got the patents on it and all that kind of stuff, and got it up on its feet and so on. So it was quite a feat.
Yeah, and in case any of the listeners don't know what Doug's referring to there, the Retro Valves are a emulated 12X7 plugin. So it lets you to modify your amp without actually modifying your amp and getting in and playing around with the guts.
That's one of the advantages. The big overall advantages that I saw and see is they have 3 different gain levels, so you could mix and match them with your tubes, or put different gain stages in different places in your amp and actually modify the sound of the amp without putting a soldering iron inside or cutting wires. So if you had an old vintage amp and you wanted to do some sound mods to it, you could do that. And if you wanted to sell the amp, for example, you just put the tubes back in and nothing's changed. So that's one advantage. The other ones are pretty obvious, like robustness. So a lot of the touring folk that use vacuum tube amps are familiar with going from town A to town B and then finding out that the amp guitar tech has to go through and swap out tubes at the back of the amp and just making funny noises or something.
Yeah.
So it kind of eliminates that issue. So those are kind of the basics. And been real happy with the performance that I've gotten out of them. So.
Yeah, and I actually I have a Black Star Club 50 amp pad, and I use them in my amp. I discovered the product probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, and I think that I actually called you up and I got you on the phone, and I tried them out, and I really like them. And in case anyone's interested in them, I'm actually going to put up unbiased demo video. I have all 3 sets of the blue, yellow, and red ones, and I'm going to swap them out in my amp in different positions so you guys can get a feel for what they are.
Yeah, and it's really fun. I enjoy doing that with different amps, and really, it's really quite drastic, the kind of changes you can get.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So it really comes down to somebody that's willing to experiment. Just throwing them in an amp, you might get the sound you want, but you'd be surprised with a little bit of testing, you could really dial up some sound that you wouldn't otherwise think you could get out of the amp. So it does take some experimentation.
Yeah, I have a blue one and a red one in my amp right now, actually, and it gives me really super clean cleans and then a little bit extra edge on the gain, and I really like what it does with the sound of my amp.
You say that because that was one of my intents, was to have people be able to do that very thing.
Yeah, it gives you a lot more versatile sounds in your amp.
Yeah, it does.
So,
yeah, that's what. Go ahead.
So are there any other cool projects you're working on that we should know about?
Yeah, so we got a couple of neat projects coming up that we're working on, actually utilizing the retrovalve technology.
Okay.
One of them is patented, and so I'm free to talk about it. It's actually a means of having the retrovalves communicate with each other in the amp.
Okay.
And they communicate through the filament wires. So there's nothing in the audio path.
So
So
what?
what that allows you to do, we have an interface that you plug your guitar into, and then the guitar goes straight into the input jack. And there's some noiseless signals that get processed by the first retrovalve, and then it communicates with other retrovalves in the chain, so that you could take a stock, say Fender amp, and make it MIDI programmable. So you can put master volume on it, or change the tone of any section, or add an effect, for example, just by using the retrovalves. So that's what we're pretty excited about.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's a neat one. That's really kind of the offshoot benefits of the retrovalve technology is that, yeah, it's nice to use them as tubes, but once you get that technology built, the sky's the limit as far as what you can do with them in a vintage tube amp. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what we're real excited about that. And then there's a couple more, but they're in the process of IP protection, so I can't talk about them right now. But we have more exciting stuff coming.
Cool.
Yeah.
So for someone that's maybe a beginner or mid-level guitar player that's looking to improve their tone, but maybe can't quite afford a boutique tube amp, and then someone that maybe can, and they can put whatever money they want towards gear.
Right.
What would you suggest they do to get a better sound with either a guitar or an amp? Or
yeah, well, a lot of it depends on what you're looking for. Guys that want to play clean, like jazz guys, they want clean. They don't want any kind of distortion in there.
Right.
They want a lot of headroom. The rock guys want saturated. A lot of them want the real saturated sound, and with nice harmonic separation. The blues guys are going to want something in between. So it depends on what you're looking for, and the variables in sound are pretty extreme.
Yeah.
Everything in the chain matters. The guitar matters. The amp matters. The speaker cabinet really matters. You'd be surprised at what a big difference that makes. So in order to experiment with that kind of stuff, most people don't have the means to have a room full of various kinds of guitars, amps, and speaker cabinets. And aside from experimenting with one of these little modelers, like a pod or some software-based application that has plug-in modules, that's a good way to try stuff out without having to buy all the different amps.
Okay.
The way I did it back in the day was just go to the local music store and just start trying stuff out, because you have it sitting right there in most cases. And when if you're doing it for a live application, like I used to do back in my 80s metal days, everything was amps cranked up and full bore and live. So there really isn't any better way to do it than to, excuse me, plug in and try it out. So that's the best way to do it, is to sit in front of a speaker and listen to it. Other than that, you're kind of resolved to trying some modeling tactics with like a computer and try different stuff out and see if there's something you like. A lot of them work really well, so you can do pretty well with that. But that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, and that's how I found my sound, if you will, is I went to some local music shops and checked out Guitar Center, and there's a lot of places that you'll probably find a lot of places in your area that if you're serious about getting some gear and you have a general idea of what you want, they'll let you plug in and play, and you can get a feel and kind of find and develop a sound from there. I think that's a good way to do that.
Yeah, there's nothing that beats sitting in front of an amp and listening to it with your ear.
Yeah.
Back in my day, there was a much more limited set of, heads. There's a handful of them. Because Marshall was the big one, right? So now there's just a gazillion different kind of models out there. A lot of it has to do with your ability to buy a boutique head, if that's what you like. But some of the old standby amps are fantastic. The old tried and true Fenders and Marshalls and those kind of things are awesome, depending on your application, right?
Yeah.
So.
And coming from a more experienced guitar player other than just me, would you say that the amp plays a bigger difference than the actual guitar body, or at least more the speaker cabinet and what it's loaded with?
I mean, the speaker and the amp, I think, would probably make up about 60 or 70% of the sound. Depending, if you're running saturated, I think the guitar probably has about a 30% contribution. If you're running cleaner sounds like a blues or a jazz thing, the guitar has a huge contribution.
Yeah.
The amps in those cases, what you like to have is a lot of headroom, so you get that really nice punch when you play. A lot of dynamics in the strings that you're playing.
Yes.
So, but a guitar matters. I mean, it does. There's no way around that. And that's why there's so many of those out there. I've been surprised so many times when I've had an instrument that I like, and I've been playing for the same rig forever, and some guy brings a guitar over, and I just go, holy crap. It's just, this is amazing. So it all matters, and it's almost impossible to try every possible conceivable combination of these things. A lot of it's trial and error and luck, but you can get pretty close by, like I said, sitting in front of an amp and a guitar and trying a few different kinds out, and it'll at least point you in the right direction.
Yeah. And one of the things I just kind of want to hammer home to our listeners is I'd interviewed Nick Diener from the band The Swellers earlier in the year, and Nick was telling me that he's seen guitars that are $300 that, as long as it's a good setup and it's got some decent pickups in it and it's the right type of wood, that some of those will actually play better than a guitar that's $3,000. And the price doesn't mean that it's a great guitar. It just means it's an expensive guitar.
That's correct. That's exactly right. I would totally agree with that. I've had that same experience. There are some manufacturers now, and it's actually been this way for quite a few years, but they've really got their manufacturing processes down, so they can do high volume production and really reduce the cost. Obviously, a lot less hand done stuff to the guitar, but there's some $300 guitars that are just amazing. I mean, they just play so good and they sound so great. And I couldn't tell you any particular one at this time, but I played a bunch of them to know that, the price isn't always what gauges how good it's going to sound or play.
Yeah. So if someone wants to buy and get their hands on a pair of retro valves, what kind of amp do they need to have to use them, and then where can they get them at?
Yeah, okay. There's they're meant for tube amplifiers. The one thing that people should know is that the retro valves are designed for high voltage, so your normally your typical tube amp, your Marshalls, your Fenders, all the different kinds of high voltage tube amps, they're designed to work in. Applications, there's a lot of these little pedals that use vacuum tubes, and more for show, because one thing I found out, a lot of people don't know this, that when you start to drop the voltage below 100 volts on a vacuum tube, they still function, but they don't have all the nice soft clipping characteristics that you normally hear in an amplifier. They start acting more like a FET or a transistor. They're good for show, and they have high input impedance, like a FET, but really the tone that you get from a tube starts to happen when you get at voltages over 100 volts. So the retro valves are designed from 150 and above. Excuse me. So you'll want to use them in regular tube amps. Some of the little pedals that are running 30-volt supplies, they might not even work at all. So that's just a heads up on that. So it's a tube amp application. You can get them. Now, there's a lot of places I've seen online. I mean, obviously Amazon, and I think it's Z-Sounds. There's some website places. There's Amp Factory, which is actually the old Jet City site. Doug White runs that. He's running Jet City now. So he sells them. And there's actually quite a few places like that. And I can't remember them all off the top of my head. If you type in retro valves and look for that, you'll get the hits, and you can pretty much get anything you want. So we've been selling them around the world and having really good success with them.
Yeah, and I think that Musicians Friends also carries them.
Yeah.
And is there any last words of advice that you'd like to give our listeners?
And give me a direction here.
In regards to finding the right gear, finding the right amp, even learning how to play, and anything from your experience that you think would be relevant to someone that's a beginner? Yeah,
I do. I have a couple of things that I'd recommend. And it was stuff that my dad recommended to me when I was playing in my heavy metal bands. And that one of the things is, if you want to start getting good as a guitar player, teach guitar. Start teaching. And you will learn really fast that way. Because the student's going to come up and ask you, what about this, what about that? And then it's your job to go figure it out that night and come back the next day and tell them. And so my brother, who's Jay Roberts, who's a fantastic guitar player and owns a guitar school here called Roberts Music Institute, that's the way he started. He started teaching at a very young age and accelerated very fast. So teaching the instrument is a great way to learn the instrument, which is not obvious to people. The other thing is actually, if you really want to start getting good, and you're kind of serious about getting good, play with other people, and don't just do it in the basement. Get out and play live on stage, and that really tunes up your chops real good. Like sitting in the basement and rehearsing over and over and over, it's kind of a dead end from a growing point of view. As soon as you go out and play those songs live, you'll be surprised at how much technique you get when you don't even realize you're getting it. So those are my two big things I'd give for advice of people that want to learn how to play guitar better. Besides, reading books and jamming along with songs like we do anyway. So.
Yeah, those are two things in particular that I've found that have really made me become a better player too, particularly playing out. And I recently began to upload some videos on YouTube for beginners that had maybe never played before, and I found myself going back and spending a lot of time relearning and practicing just to make sure that I'm giving across good information. And it's definitely made me a better player doing that. I do have another little tidbit that my dad imparted to me, which is an important one. When you're learning a new lick, for example, on a guitar, say you got some new pattern or something you want to play, it's absolutely critical, it's imperative that you play the lick so slow
that you cannot possibly make any mistake. You have to, if you start playing the lick at a speed, even if you think it's slow, and you have a little mistake in there, and you just keep practicing and practicing with that mistake in there, it's almost impossible to undo once you got it down. Because what you're doing is actually programming the base of the spine. It's nerve cells that are remembering the lick. It's not muscles. So you're actually like programming a little computer. So what you want to do is play the lick so slow that it's perfect, and then you start picking up the tempo slowly but surely, and then over time, when you play that lick and it's really fast, it's played correctly. But that's a hard thing to do. I found it challenging because I just want to jump straight to the fast part, right?
Yep.
And but if you got a little mistake and you're not getting from string A to string B in the right way, yeah, it'll kind of stick with you. So that's another one that is important. So.
Yeah, that one is invaluable because I can't tell you how many songs that I tried to learn, because I'm mostly self-taught, and I tried to learn some stuff.
Most people I know are, yeah.
And just trying to undo the bad stuff that you created takes forever.
It does. It really sticks with you. So it's a big deal. A lot big. The other detail that I'll just tell you one more, is he's written many books on this subject, so you could spend hours talking about this. The other one is to limit the amount of time. If you want to learn something, say out of a book, you got a passage you want to figure out how to play, don't just keep grinding on it, hour after hour, day after day, because you'll actually kind of burn out on it. You want to play it, you want to just force yourself to stop. Set a stopwatch or something, every half hour or 15 minutes or hour, whatever it takes, so that when you stop, you're driven to want to keep going. You're at that point, that peak where you're like, man, I just want to keep doing this. Well, that's where you want to pick up from the next time you do it. You don't want to pick up from it when you're burned out and said, I don't want to do this anymore, right?
Right.
Well, that's another key little trick to use when you're burning something. That actually takes some discipline to pull it off, but it works.
Yeah, then if anyone wants to reach out for you to get some more information on retro valves, or maybe custom amp modifications, how could they get in contact with you?
Yeah, reach me at tech at robertsaudioTechnologies.com. So it's ROBES. Sorry.
I'll put a link to it.
Excuse me, what did you say, Dave?
I'll put a link to it up on the website.
Yeah, so it's tech at robertsaudioTechnologies.com. And I read all my emails, and I try to answer as many as I can in a day. So, and if there's if I don't respond in a week or so, it's not because I've, not paying attention. There's other things going on in my life like everybody else has got going on. But I will get back, and I'll answer any question you want about retro valves. And a lot of guys just ask amp tech questions, and as long as they're simple or not a page worth of questions, I'm happy to do that too. So.
Awesome. It was great to have you on the show, Doug. And
good to talk to you, Dave.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll bring you back another time later to talk maybe more about it. One of the new things that you couldn't talk about, and maybe some other effect stuff.
You bet. Love to do it, Dave.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon.
See ya. Oh, man. Did you guys catch the last 5 minutes of that podcast? Doug gave away some really great and crucial information on how to become a better player. And just to recap, Doug Roberts' 3 key takeaways to become a better guitar player. 1, play so slowly that you couldn't possibly make a mistake. Man, this is really important because each time you practice incorrectly, you're actually making yourself worse. Think about it for a second. The more you practice incorrectly, the worse you're actually going to get. That is really crucial to know. So even though it's sometimes painful to do, take the time to play it slow and play it right the first time. So you don't have to go back and redo it another 5, 6, 7,000 times. Trust me from my experience on that. Once you have that programmed in, it's really hard to get rid of. Number 2, when you're learning something that's really hard or that's very new material you've never played before, only practice it for 30 minutes or less at a time, and then quit while you still want to come back for more. So it's always enjoyable to play and you keep yourself coming back. And number 3, to really drastically take yourself to the next level as a player, play live with a band and play out. Play in front of an audience. And secondly, teach lessons. Both of these are going to take you to the next level because they give you specific deadlines and force you to either learn things that you didn't know or spend a lot more time practicing just to get up to the next level. If you are going to play out in front of a live audience, the pressure is on, and you know that, so you're just going to practice more automatically. I hope that these 3 key things really hit home to you as much as they did to me. Those are 3 crucial things that if I knew when I was just getting started, man, I would be a way better player than I was now if I had taken the time to do those or if I would have known about them. They're things that I incorporate into my practice now, but I hope that it's something that helps you. If you guys found this podcast to be helpful, please leave us a good rating on iTunes, and so you don't miss out on new episodes and other important things to help you become a better player, sign up for our email list on findyournextguitar.com. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you in the next episode.